get some.
Before we get going, I want you to give a round of applause to probably one of the toughest gentlemen we have in the room. This guy right here. Give him a round of applause. A lot of folks here coming to your rescue. This is probably the safest.
Sense of humor.
See, that's right. That's right. This is probably the safest place that we have, or that we're in today. I got a call earlier today from Steve Sheffer, who told me that we have some dogs that were running around here sniffing and making sure that things are okay. And I see Montgomery County's finest that are here. And so, you know, every day we come to campus, we don't get all this kind of attention. So it's a pretty neat thing to have the Congressman here tonight and to host. For us to be able to host this is just really a good thing. I want to start off tonight by asking our Boy Scout Troop 777, they're going to perform the presentation of colors. So if you could please stand as they come forward. They're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And then if you would remain standing, the pledge will be followed by Montgomery County Precinct 3 Constable Ryan Gable, and he'll lead the invocation.
Color guard forward march. Color guard halt. Color guard post the colors. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Good evening. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we humbly come to you this evening in prayer. Your word says, where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I am with them. We believe you are with us today and you hear our cries for it. Please give us guidance and wisdom for our country, state, and local leaders. We continue to ask that you keep your hands of protection around Congressman Brady while he represents us in Congress. We are desperate for your presence. We thank you, our God in heaven, for the promises that we so faithfully cling to. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Amen. Please be seated. Well, I have had the distinct pleasure of being with Congressman Brady all day today. Actually, earlier today, we were at the Real Men of Montgomery County in a fashion show, and he was the MC of that event. I'm glad he took it easy on me. I had no idea, Congressman, we were going to have to do what we did today, but I guess today I really feel like a real man of Montgomery County because I didn't know I'd have to advertise the shirt I was wearing and the coat I was wearing to the whole crowd. So it's a pretty neat experience. We're honored to have the Congressman here with us this evening for a couple of reasons. Number one, he holds a special place in the life of Lone Star College, not only our system, but Lone Star College Montgomery. He was definitely instrumental in the reason as why we're here tonight and why this campus is here. And I know you know this, Congressman Brady, but we're going to be 20 years old in August of 2015. If you can believe that, 20 years old. In 1991, he helped secure the vote for us to be able to be here. And so we're really appreciative of him for that. Our Congressman Kevin Brady proudly presents or represents the 8th District, Texas, which encompasses 9 counties from the Woodlands to nearly halfway to Dallas. Our Congressman chairs the Joint Economic Committee and is a senior member of the House Ways and Means Committee, where he chairs the Health Subcommittee. Congressman Brady is pro-small business, fiscal conservative who fights daily for a simpler, fair tax code to make life easier for families without punishing businesses for growing and adding to the economy. Congressman Brady is the author of many pieces of legislation, federal legislation, such as the law that restored Texans' sales tax deduction, saving Texas families billions. Congressman Brady has written bills to cut the size of the federal government, sunset outdated and duplicate federal agencies, require cost-benefit analysis of federal regulations, reform the Federal Reserve, and permanently end the estate tax known as the death tax, which is a double tax that keeps small businesses, farms, ranches from being passed down to future generations. Most of all, Congressman Brady never moved to Washington. On July 4th, I was out walking the parade, and out jumps Congressman Brady from the crowd out there around Market Street, and I thought this statement is exactly true. He's here, and you can see him, you can touch him. He's part of us. He's a great neighbor. I know Mrs. Brady and Congressman Brady prefer to raise their boys here in the Woodlands, and I don't know if you noticed this, but you probably just saw Will was up here. I don't know where Will is. Will, if you raise your hand, give him a round of applause. That's Congressman Brady's son. So without further ado, I want you to give a warm welcome to our Congressman, Kevin Brady.
Dr. Lane, thank you for the kind introduction. More importantly, thanks for having us here at the college. Thanks for your leadership. I think with Lone Star, First Montgomery College has been just a huge asset to our community. I mean, being able to provide quality education, affordable education nearby, not just for our kids coming out of high school, but we've got workers who need training to keep their jobs and get promotions. We have single moms trying to actually work their way into a better life for the kids. They start here at Lone Star College, and I tell you what, it doesn't take an education to read an unemployment statement, but it takes an education if you're going to work your way off one and into a real life. That's what Lone Star brings to us. So again, Dr. Lane, thanks for all you do. I want to thank our constable, Ryan. Thank you so much, Ryan Gable, for the job you do in our community and public safety and just getting out there on offense for us every day. You can see you and your guys all around, men and women all the time. They do a great job. So again, Constable, thank you. And join me in thanking Troop 777. I think they did a great job and led by our Scoutmaster. This is the Scout troop I'm proud of. My son is a part of it. And they just do a great job. And I always appreciate, I don't know about you, men and women who help lead scouting for our young people, really give time above and beyond people. And again, to our adult leaders, thank you very much. Dr. Lane said, as you guys, one of the best decisions we made was to never move to Washington. By the way, Bob, I'm glad you're okay. My first thought was, gosh, I hope he's okay. Second, I hope he doesn't have Obamacare. That was great. My first 2 things, and I'm glad you're okay. As Dr. Lane said, I never moved to Washington. Kathy and I raise our boys here. I commute to work each week. I'm now over 2 million miles, flying back and forth. I just started my 5th round trip to the moon, flying back and forth to Washington. I don't do it because I love the airline food, or I love that wonderful treatment by TSA. And the truth is, I've always been worried, if you move 1,200 miles away, no matter how hard you try, you're going to get out of touch with the communities and neighbors and the families that you represent. And so I work hard to stay in touch with those I work for. That's you. So many things are changing in our area. It seems like by the day, by the week, things are changing. So I want to make sure I'm right here. I want to stay out of that bubble in Washington and stay connected here and home, because I think there's too many who are disconnected and out of touch. And I'm determined not to be one. As a result, as you know, I also hold more than 50 town hall meetings a year. I do that may not agree on every issue. In fact, I guarantee you we won't. My wife and I don't agree on every issue. But you're going to have a chance to tell me what's on your mind and ask me to explain my vote. We're going to have a chance to talk about it. Again, I think that's my responsibility as part of, again, staying in touch with those who I work for, which is you. So today I want to talk about 3 issues that are really at the forefront of some of these, of our challenges as a country. Later, if we get a chance, I'd really like to talk about my work to fix this broken tax code and rein in the IRS. And then any other questions you have on it. Bonuses. Creating secret wait lists in which to put veterans on. Delaying their health care and cooking the books just so they can receive federal bonuses. We knew, I mean, here are the veterans, you know, who defended our freedoms with their lives. We have now a lot of Vietnam veterans, war veterans, who now are at a point where they need a lot of health care. We have our Iraq and Afghanistan men and women coming back, and they need health care, including mental health care, because this has been a tough war on terror. They deserve the very best our country can give them, but the department created to help them provide that health care is doing just the opposite. And I know there are good apples within the VA. We know there are good people. Some who treat our veterans here at the community center, the clinic here in Conroe, that we all work together to create, and that I work to get expanded. We got permission to triple the size of it. We know there's good people there. We know there's good people at DeBakey. But around the country, unfortunately, we've got too many bad apples, and I think the wrong culture within the VA. Too often, they treat our veterans like they're a nuisance in the way. And in fact, you're a priority. We thought this scandal originally was focused on Phoenix and maybe one or two other regional efforts, but the Inspector General has found that now they are doing investigations of 16 or more veterans regional centers around the country, because this corruption is bigger than originally thought. Even though the House has passed more than 330 bills, creating jobs, reining in regulation in the IRS, cutting taxes, and all of them are sitting in the Senate today. One bill that finally got through that Senate was a bill to start address this scandal. And it does a couple of things. One, it hires more doctors and nurses to see our veterans. The truth is there aren't enough to see them right now. That's one of the reasons the wait times are longer than they should be. We've got to attract good doctors and good nurses to treat our veterans. Secondly, it spends money to reduce the backlog of veterans waiting for their disability cases. This is hard to believe, but we have a backlog of more than 1 million veterans, 1 million, waiting to have the first decision on their disability case. We have a backlog almost as long as all the veterans who lost their lives in America's war, waiting for the government just to give them a decision about their benefits. And that's wrong. And so the bill spends money to reduce that backlog and get some answers. It gives power to the new VA secretary. We have a new one, and I'm hopeful that he'll get to the problem and take command and control of this problem. But as you know, we've got bad apples. In the civil service, it can take 2 or 3 years before you can fire someone whose just behavior is unacceptable. So we give the VA secretary the power to immediately fire bad apples within the VA. And we do that because we need the good apples to be able to step forward. And then finally, because these wait times are often too long, again, we have good people at the DeBakey Center. We have good people at Conroe and Tomball, as a matter of fact. But in too many cases, our veterans are waiting too long to see a doctor, and traveling too far. So in this new law, we require that if a veteran has to wait more than 30 days to see a doctor, or if they have to travel more than 40 miles to a clinic, and then the VA has to give them the option of seeing a local doctor, going to a local hospital, getting treated right now. I think this isn't the total solution to the problem at the VA. I think this is a good start, and I don't know how you feel, but We cannot do enough for our veterans, and it's just unacceptable for America to treat them this way. Second issue is investigation of the IRS. And you know, some people see this as a political issue, but I think it's much bigger than this. The government shouldn't have the power to silence the voices of Americans who simply disagree with it, or silence the voices of Americans who want to say a say in how their own government is run. And that's what this issue is all about. Ways and Means Committee that I serve on revealed the targeting by the IRS, not just of conservative donor organizations, but of conservative donors. The groups that simply supported Israel, that support the Constitution, that want to educate young people on the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, that actually disagree with our government about the size of the government. Just people who want to make America better. Our government, through the IRS, targeted them for extra scrutiny. They put out be on the lookout lists and put these organizations on. They targeted the donors. They misled the American public. They lied to Congress for more than 2 years, and I say they're lying today to us. Does anyone believe that out of the thousands of computers within the IRS, the only 5 whose emails were lost, for the exact period of time that we requested them, were the 5 main persons of interest in the investigation? Does anyone believe that that happened? No. Well, the truth is, this is the most corrupt and deceitful IRS, I think, in the history of the agency. We're going to continue our investigation until the truth is fully known, till we hold people like Lois Lerner accountable for their breaking the law, and maybe more importantly, to stop this from happening again. When are we going to hold people accountable? This is one of my greatest frustrations, because whenever someone in Washington and these federal government agencies misbehave, it seems like they're never held accountable. With Lois Lerner, we have already forwarded to the Justice Department evidence of 3 clear violations of law and just sent a 4. We've been so frustrated by the stonewalling of this information by the White House that we've taken extraordinary actions, including seeking a special prosecutor, passing laws successfully that keeps IRS from enforcing the Affordable Care Act. We've actually cut the IRS budget back to 2008 levels. That's before President Obama took office. And we're going to cut it some more, and some more, and some more, till they tell us to do it. And again, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, independent, libertarian, I don't care where you are in that spectrum, we cannot have the government with that power. You know, we saw this in the Civil Rights era. We saw it in the Vietnam War protests. Today, the only difference is the weapon of choice is the IRS, the one agency with the power to destroy your lives and your families. And no president should have the power to use that agency to target you simply because of your beliefs. So this is bigger than this president, bigger than one issue. It really is about your ability to stand up and speak out in a country that was founded on it. So we're going to continue. Our investigation is going to continue. Finally, before we open for questions, I want to talk about the crisis of the board. We've had now tens of thousands of young children, some of them teenagers, surge across the U.S. border seeking permits that frankly don't exist. And while the media may tell you that it is slowing down, in truth, this has been occurring for the last number of years. By New Year's Day, over nearly 200,000 young people without any family relatives will have made a more than 1,000-mile journey, dangerous journey, with the promise that they'll receive permits that simply don't exist. This is a crisis at the border. I think it stems from 2 things. One, when the president deferred action deporting certain children in America, and when coyotes in Central America took that as a signal that they could convince families to spend $3,000 to $9,000, send their children by themselves on this dangerous journey to America for permits, again, that don't exist. We sent, some of those kids didn't make it to the United States. And if you're a young woman, you face particular risk on that journey. And coyotes who care nothing about you, less than nothing about you. House Republicans, when this crisis began, we sent a team down to Central America, headed by a Texas Congresswoman, Kate Ranger from Fort Worth. Our team met with the parents. They met with the governments in Central America. And what the parents told our team was, we want our children back. If there aren't permits for them, we want our children back. The government's told us, we want our children back. You don't read about this in the paper. But so the House Act, the House, before we left, we stayed late to pass legislation not to manage this problem, but to stop this problem. And we started exactly where you would start, by securing the border. Texas can't secure the border alone, it just can't. And it shouldn't be their responsibility, to be truthful. And so what we funded was allowing our governor and governors on border states to call out the National Guard, paid for by federal taxpayers, to the border to assist our Border Patrol as they handle this crisis. And we reimburse Texas taxpayers, that's us, for the costs we're already incurring to secure the border. Second, our priority was to deter these parents from sending these kids on this dangerous journey. And so we made it clear that we would close the loophole in the 2008 law designed to help a very small group of children who are being smuggled for sexual trafficking purposes and human smuggling from Central America, now is being misused and sold by these coyotes to open the door for so many. And so we changed that law, we closed that loophole, and we end what many call, what I call house and release. Today, the law says that if you're an unaccompanied child from Central America, not from Mexico or Canada, but outlying countries, and you come here unaccompanied, that rather than be returned to your family immediately, you're turned over to Health and Human Services, housed, fed, clothed, and then released into the United States with a family member, a guardian, a sponsor, often people who are living here illegally. And because the backlog is as long as 5 years before their cases are ever heard, as you'd imagine, we never hear from them again. That's today's house and release. And we end that in the bill that Republicans passed. And instead, what we said was, we will hold you at the border safely, have your case heard within 2 weeks, and then we will reunite you with your family back in Central America. And to make sure that happens, we redirect $40 million in foreign aid to these countries to make sure it goes to reuniting those kids back in Central America. How many of you think that's the right thing to do? We, though, don't believe two things. This president could stop this crisis himself. He's chosen not to. He's not going to. The Senate should be acting on this crisis. They went home for August, haven't returned. That bill's sitting there, ready for action. All they have to do is step forward, go back to work, get that bill done, stop this problem. But we also know that here over the next 2 to 3 weeks, the president, through executive order, is going to expand work visas and more amnesty to several million Americans, somewhere between 2 and 5 million more, without any law to justify it. Clearly unconstitutional. And so anticipating that, the second bill we passed, the last bill we passed before we left, was to suspend his earlier executive order on deferring deportation for children and to prevent any government worker or agency from expanding that to anyone else. Because we think, I believe, we need to shut the back door of illegal immigration so we can keep open the front door of legal immigration. So those who want to come to America to better themselves or better our country, who bring skills and a motivation and work ethic, welcome to America. But we have to insist you come in through the front door of legal immigration. That's got to be the way it is, both from rule of law and from national security as well. There is no other choice than that. And so the House has acted. I'm really disappointed the Senate has not gone back to work up there. I hope you'll continue to raise your voices to ask them to step forward on this issue, because it's a tough one. But if we don't take strong action, more parents are going to send their kids. I mean, as young as 2 months old. 2 months old. On that 1,000-mile journey. Will is 15 now. My other son is 12. When they were younger, and I didn't let them go to the park by themselves, much less a 1,000-mile journey in the hands of someone who, again, cares next to nothing about them. And so this is a crisis. You can't ignore this problem. By the way we funded this, we said not a dime to the president to do what he's been doing. The money that we identified, we just went through budgets and swept in money that hadn't been spent and said we're going to apply it to secure the border, deter those parents from sending their kids, and reunite them. So I hope you think that's right. With that, I always want to talk tax reform because I want to break this or fix this broken code. But why don't we stop right now and just take some questions? Tell me what's on your mind, issues we should be dealing with. Yes, sir. Oh, Bill? Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Larry Erie.
Yes, sir.
411 of the American Legion out of Conroe.
Good to see you, man.
Okay, I just got back from the national convention up in Charlotte, North Carolina.
How'd it go?
Went real well. The new secretary of the VA was there.
What'd you think?
All right, it's good to hear him speak. Also, the president was there. I
What'd
didn't
you think?
listen to him, so I wasn't there. I've got a couple of questions, Congressman.
Yes, sir.
Sequestration.
Yeah.
The effect it's having on our active duty troops.
Yep.
And the military overall, the security of our country. And the second one is Veterans Administration, which you produced some things on, but the local VA clinic, we've been promised for expansion for the last 4 years. I went to see the doctor here a month ago. I saw a nurse. I didn't see the doctor. This is ridiculous.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Nope. Thank you, Commander. Join me in thanking him for his service. In order. No, let's reverse it. One, this community, our Conroe Clinic is so critical to our veterans, but the minute it was built, it was already full. And now it's the busiest VA clinic in the entire region. That's why we sought permission and got it to triple expansion. It should have, for a little while, it was actually ahead of schedule. And then it hit a roadblock, and it stayed there. Bureaucratic roadblock. We've been working with the VA, both in Houston and national, to get that roadblock. It's out of the way so that center can be built. We were told again that they're trying to work through the bureaucratic snafu, but it is not resolved yet. And here's my commitment to you. We're not going to stop till we get that VA clinic tripled in size, okay? Because you need it. You deserve local health care and quality health care.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Secondly, I do have some hope for this new VA secretary. I was, because he was a veteran and Army lifetime career and had been wounded. I really had some hopes for Shinseki, but he just lost control of the VA. And a good example was this VA clinic. And I've worked with every VA secretary, and Clinton and Bush and then Obama. When I needed to see them, they would see me. And when we made the case, we'd get it solved. I've waited, well, almost 8 months to get a 5-minute phone call with Secretary Shinseki. And I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he was military. I figured if anyone would be looking out for us, it would be him. Turns out I was wrong. So we're hopeful that this new person can just be honest about what's going on with the VA, help us clear it out. In my philosophy is whatever it takes. If you need more money, in fact, in this new bill, we approved money for about 27 new VA clinics around the area. If you need money for doctors or nurses or technology, or tell us, we'll get you the money. But I actually think the problem's deeper than that. You agree? And so we can't give up on just what we just did. Then the first point on sequester, the sequester cuts overall for the budget were pretty modest. In effect, we told a 500-pound person to lose 10 pounds. That's all we did in sequester. You know, those are the only budget cuts we made. But most of those cuts, unfortunately, landed straight on our military, on their readiness, on their training. And if we had allowed the sequester to continue for another year or two, and if we'd allowed it to continue to play out, we would hollow out our military at a time when the world has become more dangerous by the hour. And so I know I caught grief from some of you and from some of the special interest groups for exchanging sequester, taking the cuts off the military and making the cuts somewhere else in the government that's not as important, funding the training, restoring the weapons, and giving the military pay raise. Because it was important. Right now, the last thing we ought to do is let our guard down. The world, this war on terror is not over. I know some people up there think it is, you know, and we'll just kind of shrink back to ourselves and no one will attack us. But ISIS, the new threat, they make it clear. Their goal is to drown America in its own blood. That is their goal. They're not leaving us alone. So we're going to have to take this. We can't be the policeman to the world, but we can be the policeman to our people, to our citizens. And if that means taking it to someone rather than letting it land here, my view is take it to them. Be smart, have a mission, and I don't vote for any mission or any funding or war unless our men and women have a clear mission and they have 110% support from us, because we're sending them in the battle with one arm tied behind their back, then I want them out. You know, it's all in for them or all. So, look, I'm glad to take the criticism on switching the sequester out, but it's what we need to do. And by the way, in that same bill, the Ryan Murray budget deal, it increased the border security to the highest operational force along our border and the highest number of detention beds in history. It cut the EPA by 20%, rolled back, rolled back the IRS to 2009 and no funding to enforce the Affordable Care Act. It banned the Attorney General from ever conducting Fast and Furious again. It withheld money from Libya until they tell us the truth from their side and Benghazi. And it banned the NSA from collecting and restoring our personal emails and communications. That was a good bill to support. Yet, could it have cuts more? Absolutely. You can't give me enough to cut. But I don't know about you, but those are pretty high priorities in my opinion.
Kevin, we're in Austin. Our new state senator sworn in by Governor Brady a couple days ago. And Brandon has been really strong on border protection here, and I know we're trying to get the National Guard down there. But the problem we have, every state but one doesn't enforce it, doesn't do any good. Now we hear Governor Brown saying, come across the border, you're here, go to the state, level, spread across the country. What can you do to help us stop this? And I heard everybody say it is an invasion we got going on right now. It's costing billions of dollars. What can we help you, and how can you help us stop it?
Yeah, you just identified one of the big, I don't know if you heard the question, but it was what about, one state just can't secure the border itself. When you have a state like California inviting people to come through the back door. And it really points out a big problem. Every time we have focused enforcement in one sector of the border, it's like squeezing a balloon. It just pops out somewhere else. And so then we just chase it there and we chase it there. And it really tells you we don't have a strategy to have operational control of our own border, which for a country of our size and role in the world just seems crazy. And one of the bills that I support that is led by the Chairman of Homeland Security, Michael McCall from Austin, a Texan, is a bill that secures the border in a smart way. Yeah, it applies more border agents. Yeah, it does fencing in key areas. Yes, it does more detention beds, frees up our Border Patrol to pursue illegal immigrants into federal lands, which we're having trouble doing today. But more importantly than that, it requires that local businesses hire only legal workers. It ensures that those who come in America through the front door for a visa, work visa, tourist visa, whatever, today 40% of those who are here illegally came in on those visas. They chose to stay. And for 10 years, they've said, we're supposed to have a system to track them. So when their date is up, we make sure they've left. They've never done that. And so the bill requires us to have that in place within 2 years, which is the right answer. So, Belton, I guess my point is we've got solutions to secure the border. And we've got in the House the will to do it. We need a Senate who'll stand with us to secure the border in a smart way, both for security reasons, and so this problem doesn't just keep repeating itself. So, what do you think?
I think you're absolutely correct. I think this election is a critical part of our entire country. If we don't take back the Senate, where's this country going to go? It's going to be gone for a reason.
Yeah.
Really concerned about it.
Thank you. Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Dan Browse.
Yeah.
I'm the,
Microphone, please. Thank you.
Oh, here you go.
I can speak up if you need me to speak up. Is that, can you hear me?
Here we go.
You're speaking great
I've
one
got it.
direction.
I've got it.
Well, can't hardly me.
No, it's just right here.
Yeah, Kevin, I'm the ALPA volunteer representative for the Lone Star Executive Airport.
Yes, sir.
And I'm here, I need to ask you about what do we need to do to get you to sign on to and support House Bill 3708, the pilot protection bill that is now running, which would help the Lone Star Airport, all general aviation across the country, but add a number of jobs in maintenance, that kind of stuff, revive the general aviation. If you revive that maintenance and the pilots and things of that nature, institutions like this one here are going to have to start training these young guys and young women to maintain these aircraft and would help
Okay.
all across the general aviation.
Do you have a copy of the bill or link we can go to?
Whatever you need done,
Right.
I can get Andrew.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for telling me about, let me look into it. That's why we do town hall meetings. This is, I learned from everyone. So let's do that and I'll get you an answer back on it.
All right,
Okay.
thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
I was in Chicago recently, and a relative is a Chicago policeman, and we were discussing the drug trafficking
Yeah.
from the border. And I remember some border guards saying that even if they secured the border, we'd still get drugs through, and I thought that's curious. So I asked him, and he said, oh yeah, of course. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, it's NAFTA. And he said, we're only checking one truck that comes through and every 100 or every 500 trucks. He said, so those drugs are coming in the trucks because of NAFTA. And so I'm asking you if that's the case.
I think, great question. I think that description was half right in that we are stopping the drugs coming in the United States. It's not because of NAFTA, in my view. It's simply because trade throughout the world has increased. The number of trucks both going out of the United States and in have increased on all borders, as have airline flights and water, barge traffic and ship traffic to the ports. Our economy is just growing, and I don't think our technology and our commitment on security has grown with it. And couple that with America's, unfortunately, insatiable appetite for drug use. And yeah, this is a huge challenge. And, just apart from what it does to our economy and what it does destroys communities, and we've got those gangs here, unfortunately, that have moved from Houston and are creeping their way this direction. And our law enforcement's doing an amazing job, holding that line. But that drug use just destroys families. It just does. And every parent, it's your worst nightmare, frankly, to see your children get caught in drugs. And so the short answer is we're not doing enough to do it. And we're going to need not just more people, we're going to need a lot smarter technology. The DEA will tell you, it is a constant fight. These people are extremely clever. They have unimaginable resources, and they always feel like they're fighting from a crouched position, just because of what the drug lords, the resources they have. So, thanks for raising it.
It's hit the Woodlands, and young men are just happening to us, and it's because of drugs. And they're nice boys, but they're getting hooked on drugs, and they're coming in and taking cash, guns, anything from garage, and the policeman told us it's drug use.
Yeah. Last week we did a couple town halls on plant factory floors over in Navasota, and so we were one in Navasota and afterwards, and it was a workforce, very hard-working, created oil field type manufacturing products, and afterwards a young Hispanic worker, maybe 24, 25. His question to me privately was, what are you doing to stop synthetic marijuana? He said, I'm seeing this in our community and with neighbors. It is a huge problem. And I didn't have an answer for him because these drugs continue, designer drugs continue to grow. And so this challenge, we've got to get a handle on it. Yes, sir.
Bill Wagner from Conroe.
Yes, Bill.
My question is, how did Southwest Key get funded? That's that place up on Legal Lane Road,
Yeah.
taking in these illegal aliens.
Yeah.
From a presentation I saw, Southwest Key is receiving $100 million in grants this year, or over that, and they received like $40 million last year. So I was wondering if you and Boehner are going to be working to defund that agency in the future. They're part of the Ross, as I understand.
It is from our analysis, it is one of the largest organizations in the country. It provides facilities not just for these unaccompanied children, but charter schools and a number of other youth-type programs throughout the country. I think they are the 5th largest Hispanic organization in the nation, according to their website. They're funded through a variety of programs, including Health and Human Services for this unaccompanied children. I think the facility in Conroe, Steve, has been here 9 years, and I wasn't aware of it. I've driven by it, a dozen times, I guess, wasn't aware of it. We asked for, and they granted us a tour of the facility with our local elected officials who had basic questions their constituents wanted answered. What we saw was this is a facility that can hold up to 160 young people from ages 10 to 17. It's about half full right now. Most ages, even though it can go 10 to 17, they're 14 to 17 years old. What we saw was fairly basic housing with steel bunk beds, wooden bunk beds, 8 to 2 school classroom We didn't see the food, but some basic health care. They stay on average 22 days in the Congress facility, and then they are, most of them, shipped to the Northeast, to Massachusetts, Maryland, and those areas. Steve may have asked the question, how many of them stay here in Montgomery County? I think it was 2% stay in Montgomery County. I think the number is 117 total over the years that it's been doing this. But most of them are sent to the Northeast. The kids, all of them come across the border with the name of a contact, phone number, email of a contact in the United States. Many of them have their birth certificates with them. And all of them have a story about abuse or persecution that they received. I think most of them are coached to go through that process, because now they know what the loophole in the law is. They know what they have to say. They know that triggers being held and housed and later released through the country. And so my view is that Southwest Key is the symptom of the problem. The problem is what we need to address at the border to deter these parents from sending their kids, close the loophole, retain and then return those children, and there won't be any occupants of the Southwest Key facility in Congress. And so my focus is going to be on addressing the problem at its root core, the border. Yes, ma'am, in the green.
Yes, I'm just wondering, since the Mexico president came over here, I'm Yvette, I'm on Pond Road,
Yes,
and since the Mexican president came over here, has anybody said anything to him about releasing our jail Marine?
The House certainly has. Marine Sergeant Camarista. Yeah. The question was about our Marine Sergeant who's still being held in Mexico for making an inadvertent turn and telling them that he had weapons with him, and they've continued to hold him. And here's my pet peeve, while the White House is willing to negotiate the release of a deserter for 5 Taliban officers, why won't you go to bat for this American Marine in Mexico? Why is he still behind bars? Again, the House has acted on this issue. Nothing from the Senate, certainly nothing from the President. We have contacted the attorneys for the Marine. The parents are still plenty discouraged. The lawyers feel like there's a path forward here, that first step in hearing that was held down there, they feel actually like this is going the right direction for them, because our obvious question is, what more do we need to do to help you? So they're just saying, let us work this right now. So we're praying and hoping, and we're ready to help them. So thanks for asking that question. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, we're going on. Why don't you guys just grab people? How are you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Thank you, sir.
I saw you over in D.C. last year, came and visit you.
Was
But
I
it's
working?
still, huh?
Was I working at all?
Yeah, you were running
Oh.
back and forth. Got to talk. At least I got a few minutes to talk to you. But it's the same issue. We're fighting for, freedom for the disabled. And the whole thing about it is our vets are coming back. And 24 years for the ADA to be passed, and we're still having access issues and being able to get into places. What are we setting for our vets? We're going to tell them that we're going to isolate you and segregate you from the people that you serve to fight to make this country free? You go to town hall, what's that called? Conwell Tower over there. I can't even get into the bathroom into the place in there. I can't even get into the door. I have to go around the corner to go find a bathroom. And this is my own town that I've lived here for 34 years, and I can't even use the bathroom in the town center over here. The parking areas, they put dots in the roads. I can't use my lift because it sits on the dots. I can't even get out of my own van in a handicapped parking space. 24 years and we're still having access issues. Our military, we fought for this country to be free. And yet we're still isolated, we still have these issues that we can't go in where our friends can go in and everybody else can go in. Where's our equal honor? Where are we considered to be equal? We're not considered to be equal. Just because we have a disability, whether it's our own, whether we're born, or whether we fought for it, or what circumstances happen, we're still isolated, we're still segregated from the rest of the community. All we want is the same rights as everybody else. We fought to be free in this country, we expect the country to fight for us or support us. Thank you.
No, thank you. What do you think? What can I most do to help? To help? What can I do to help?
The back ADA, they were supposed to, in every town, was supposed to have an ADA advisory or somebody who looks at these new business being made, being created. The sidewalks, I fought the county for sidewalks. They fixed 15 out of 30 places. So I feel pretty good because they got half of them fixed. But still an issue that our people come back and we still can't get it around in our own town, in our own community. That's pretty sad. You know, we fought for freedom and we can't use our own freedom in our own town.
I know we got a chance.
24 years, I'm sorry.
No.
But we're still fighting for what the ADA says, the guidelines. And every year they came out and they revised it 3 years ago or 2 years ago, and they gave a little bit of leeway. But it's still, it's access issue, it's being able to get into places, it's being able to drive where you want, be free. That's what it's about, it's freedom.
I know we had a chance to visit for a short period in Washington. Can we visit again here? And let's talk through some of those issues, okay?
Yeah, I got some information I'll leave with you.
Great, thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Kevin,
There we
Paul
go.
Leonard.
Yes, sir. Good to see you.
Good to see you again. You mentioned all these bills that they sound great. I'm sure most of us would agree that they're great. But you said there's 330
Yeah.
in the Senate now. What's to prevent these that we've talked about this evening from following the same fate? I mean, I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
Say that again.
The bills that you've discussed this evening, are they going to languish in the Senate like those 330 that are there now?
Until the Senate is changed.
So we've been, everything sounds great, but we're not getting anywhere
Well,
in those regards.
no one's more frustrated than I am because I know the narrative is there's a do-nothing Congress and the Republicans are obstructing everything. I say it's just the opposite. You know, we're acting on all these issues that really matter to people. I mean, just real people in Texas, in America, and they're going nowhere in the Senate. And again, I don't care if they agree with us. Just do your job. Pass out your idea, whatever it is, and let's, according to the Constitution, let's find out if there's some common ground. So I just want the Senate to do their job, or let's change them and get a Senate in there that will.
Is there any way that you could invite the President to your Congress
Well,
and ask him what he proposes to do in person in front of the American people?
you know,
How he's saying thank you.
yeah, that's a great point. We've invited the President.
Can he be invited?
We have done it so many times. Asked him to sit down on all these issues.
Not sit down, go before you, answer questions, and so that the whole country can see what he's doing.
I'd love to see it happen, even if we had to go to a golf course. Yes, ma'am. No, thank you.
Yeah, hi, Congressman Brady. Greg Dock here from Montgomery.
Yeah, Greg.
I'm very concerned about something I read in Fox News Daily today, an email that I subscribe to, about the possibility of the Democrats trying to force a government shutdown before the midterms,
Yeah,
based on immigration.
Yeah.
If President Obama does some executive action,
yeah.
that would, as you already said, would cause 7 million illegals to all of a sudden become legal, and then, in effect, dare the Republicans to try to defund some aspect of that which might lead to a government shutdown, which of course they would then blame on the Republicans, which isn't really accurate. What can the Republicans do to counter that, or do you feel like there's any validity? And the dirty tricks department, I very much believe it is probably that. So
Thanks for pointing this out, because what the president is doing not only is it unconstitutional, it flies in the face of what he has said up until weeks ago, which is the constitutional authority for immigration lies with Congress. And he has said, I'll veto anything that's not comprehensive reform. Yet he's going forward with all this. So the question is why? I think at its heart, there's a whole nother goal here. And the goal is to so enrage Republicans that we will impeach him or shut down the government or do anything that would provide sympathy for him or distract the American public from his failed presidency. I think that's the bigger issue at hand here. So we are going to have to be tremendously disciplined, not take that bait, because I want nothing in between now and the November election so that the American public can have a say. It's a referendum on this president and his friends in the Senate. What do you think? You know, the only good news about executive orders from one president is the next president can wipe them out with the signature themselves. And so, but this issue is going to frustrate. It is going to be outrageous. It's designed to evoke exactly that emotion from you. And we absolutely cannot take that bait.
Do you expect something like that to happen?
I do. But we are not pursuing impeachment short of a clear criminal act. We're not going to shut this government down. The president's going to have to live under his failures abroad, and his failures on the border, and his failures on the economy, and the failures in America. So, I mean, do you agree with that?
Yes, sir. It's suicide.
Yeah, well, tell you what, you know, if you're angry and frustrated with another person, you don't pour gasoline on yourself and light the fire. You know, you got to be smarter. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to thank you for doing your good service for us. I was wanting to suggest that the Republican Party counter what's going on in the media, where Obama is on, he's got his face on the media every day, and Republicans can't get a second of coverage, by going to the internet. When Obama ran for re-election, he had a little square up on Microsoft Explorer, all in for Obama kind of a thing. And so why can't the Republicans spend some of their money, put a little box on the Explorer and all the other web browsers, and offer up the list of all the legislation that has not been passed that would have improved the economy, a whole list of all the executive orders, and bring out all these failures, and because more people use the internet coming in through these web browsers than watch television and even read the newspaper. So I'm looking. I think the Republican Party ought to take some of this money they're getting from contributions to put themselves out there where people actually are, and make themselves known and go around the media. And the other suggestion I have is, well, you say you want Obama to live with his failures. That's true, you can highlight that. But I think from now on, the Republicans should never mention his name again. They should say the Democratic president, over and over and over again.
Blame that president.
What they're trying to do, and what you want to, I'm proposing is that you're laying his problem on the feet of the Democrats. That they made him, they sustain him, and support him. And so that's my suggestion. And could you get the Republicans to do that?
Here.
I agree with maybe if we put a quarter in the jar every time we said we could retire the debt, you know, here pretty soon. So, where else we got questions? Oh, here we go. Steve.
Thanks again
Thanks for
being here
joining us
tonight.
today.
You have been a traveling madman. I've been trying to keep pace with you as you've made it around Montgomery County. I appreciate you doing this. In light of his question earlier and what you referred to, I heard Democrat strategists this evening, two of them talking about the fact that they're going to try and scramble the deck in between a continuing resolution and the November elections by having the president grant blanket amnesty to millions of illegals. And we know what will happen as a result of it. There will even become more illegals coming across the border. And we get the fact that so many of these are young people, but 90% of these young people are between the ages of 15 and 18. And as Senator Coburn pointed out, 60% of them have arrest records. In January of 2013, the president said, if Congress does not act, I will, in response to Sandy Hook. And he was going to use his executive pen and executive order to create gun control in America. And I'm so proud of Sheriff Gage, our sheriff, who said, not in our county, you're not. Right? Sheriff Mueller from Oregon led the nation in an act of interposition where they said, no, it's not going to happen. Would you encourage Texas to take a standpoint of interposition as well over illegal immigration, where we say, we're going to follow the Constitution, we're going to take these adults and these young men that are 15 to 17, we're going to take them to the Laredo Crossing, and we're not going to follow federal, an executive order any longer. Would you support that?
You know, I want the state of Texas to exercise every right it has under the Constitution. I do think, though, Steve, on the border, if we let the federal government off the hook on its responsibility to hold them and send them home, I think we'll have a bigger problem down the road. I think it's unfair. Texas has to go this alone, you know, of all these states. And I just want Washington to step up and just do its job on the border so Texas can grow the economy and do what we do so well. And so, yeah, do everything the state can do within its constitutional right, but keep the pressure on everyone to solve this problem. So, who's got the microphone? Oh, there you go. Yes, sir.
Mr. Brady, thank you. You voted in 1998 to impeach Bill Clinton, correct? Okay. In my mind, this president makes Bill Clinton look like a choir boy. Every day, I'm dismayed to wake up and know that this man is in our old office. It's disgusting that he's our commander-in-chief. Twice you've mentioned unconstitutional activity by him, mentioned impeachment. I think just Obamacare alone, where he's lied to the American people over and over and over again, is a high crime or misdemeanor. So what would it take him to do for you to support his impeachment? Because in my lifetime, there has never been a president who deserves it more than he does.
No, I know. I am more frustrated than you, because what they report of what's going on there, frankly, isn't half of what's happening in the federal government. And I've impeached the president. And with clear criminal behavior, I will do it again for any other president. But I think we know for sure it will fail. We know for sure it will backfire on us. We know for sure it'll create public sympathy for a president who frankly doesn't deserve it. And at the end of the day, you know, I'm ultra-conservative on constitutional impeachment. You know, I don't believe politicians should remove someone from office, even someone I disagree with so much, because of political differences. Because I believe he is acted unconstitutional. I believe he's picked and chosen laws and ignored others and made some up. I think the decisions he's made in Benghazi and with Sergeant Bergdahl, and the way he's taken the Affordable Care Act and just rewritten it, you know, are serious political policy differences. But they are not clear criminal behavior. And so, at the end of the day, I still think the power of the Constitution gave us set the ballot box. I mean, I trust the people, even though I don't know how they made this decision 2 years ago. But the ballot box, to me, has more power than any group of politicians, period. So I'm very careful because I also know that just like the impeachment here, provision against Reagan and Bush 41 and Bush 43, you know, we're going to see what I hope is the next Republican president face impeachment over the simplest of policy differences. And so I'm just sort of ultra-conservative on the Constitution when it comes to impeachment. I just think we're supposed to be we the people, not we the politicians. And so elections matter. Elections matter.
Look what you get if you impeach it.
Yeah. Don't ruin our night's sleep with the thought of Joe Biden.
Congressman Brady, Devin Gassey, Consolidated again. I want to ask something that's similar to what you've talked about in terms of bills being passed by the House that are languishing in the Senate. This one is 3086, the Internet Tax Freedom Act. As you know, the provisions of that are expiring on November 1st.
Yeah.
And what that would allow is for states and municipalities to tax internet access.
Yeah.
As I said, you guys, I believe, unanimously passed it in the House to permanently exempt internet from taxation, whereas the Senate, the best they can come up with is a 2-month extension. Do you think there will be a bargain struck for that, or are we looking at just continuous extensions of that exemption until, well, who knows?
I'm hopeful. Great question. We've always been adamant about not taxing access to the internet, you know, and so I think there's 100% agreement on continuing the ban. Hopefully we'll act, if not, in 2 weeks in September when we come back in November. There are some, as you said, they're pushing for a shorter term extension. You know, I just want to make it permanent. You know, just permanent ban on that taxation. But we don't know yet. We don't have a clear path on how we're going to get it done. So thanks for raising it, because we can't let it expire. Thanks, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, well, I am concerned about his decision on these executive orders of such magnitude that it produces a constitutional crisis. If you have another, what you just said, another president that's going to reverse the amnesty, and you're going to have all these people that were given amnesty, then they'll reverse it, and they'll have to leave the country. That's ridiculous. And somebody has to stop. We have another shadow government, and it was started long ago. He's just perfected it to a king, where you have no government anymore. You have a kingdom, and you have a king, and that has to stop.
Feels that way, doesn't it?
No, it is that way. It is that way. Yes.
Here's we're using in the House, again, there's a reason he's taking these actions. And it's because we blocked his legislation to do these things in the House. So we're using every constitutional power we've got. From passing laws to rein these things in, stopped in the Senate. Cutting budgets and agencies and defunding the regulations to put in. Some of them we've got across the line. Most of them are stopped in the Senate. A few weeks ago, as you know, we took the unusual action of authorizing the House to file a civil suit against the President on executive overreach. This one relates to the Affordable Care Act. It's just one of many up there. And this issue is bigger than just this, like the IRS, it's bigger than just this President. You and I, as average Americans, we have to follow the law. why shouldn't the president have to follow the law also? I mean, you can't allow any president, Republican or Democrat, to pick and choose what law they want to follow and which ones not, and to create ones where none exist. And so we're actually trying to figure out new constitutional tools in order to address this executive overreach, because if I'm the next president, and I won't be, but if I am, I'll take what happened there and I'll stretch it even further. And so the whole reason for filing this lawsuit was not a precursor to impeachment. It wasn't shutting down the government. It is to restore the checks and balances of the Constitution, which, by the way, have worked pretty well for over 200 years. So it is bigger than just this person in the White House. And everyone, I don't care what political stripe you may be, ought to be concerned too.
Congressman, we have time for a
Couple more, great. Where's the microphones at? We got more down here. We have several down here. We have a gentleman there. Man there.
Hello?
Hey, Diane. Okay, well, let's go with Diane and okay?
How do we restore the idea of personal responsibility when we have a government that encourages dependability? I was at my hairdresser earlier this week, and she's the owner of the business, and she said, I need to hire some more people. I have lots of people, but they will only work a very few hours, because if they work more hours, they lose their welfare benefits. Now, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, Diane, this is one of the biggest issues facing the country. We have 3 million jobs going unfilled today. Yet, we have in 13 states, welfare pays better than $15 an hour worked. In more states than that, it pays higher than the $10 minimum wage the president is seeking. And for young women, especially in tough communities, single moms, have children young, they know that if they work to get a skill and get a job, they'll lose the benefits they have. And so we're creating, the government has created poverty traps to keep people dependent upon the government. And even those, who want to work their way out are told by their peers, are you done? What are you doing? I had a town hall in Madisonville in part of our district, and it was on tax reform last summer, I guess, about this time. After it was over, I met 2 young men. They'd started a business. They're doing a number of things, including doing tax returns and bookkeeping and all that. And the reason they wanted to talk to me was that they had a client who they wouldn't name, who is, as like others, gamed the system. And so this person's monthly check is about $5,000 a month from the government. And at the end of the year, they just filed her return, extended return, where she was getting a check back for earned income, child tax credit, and other issues of $9,000. So they said, here's a person, we're busting our tail to start our business. And here's a client, who's getting $60,000 a year and a $9,000 bonus check for not working.
And doesn't feel bad about it.
What's wrong about that picture? And so Ways and Means Committee I serve on, we're making welfare reform a major priority. If we can get a Republican Senate, that'll march down there with us. Because we got anyone who's able-bodied needs to go to work, and look, we'll help people who are trying to get a skill or get a hand up. We will. And welfare reform in the 90s did just that. But the states have watered them down. It's time to go right back and do those same reforms. You agree?
Absolutely. And drug testing.
And drug testing. Yeah.
Hello, and I'm concerned about the Justice Department and Eric Holder, and I'm wondering what the possibilities are of when the Congress asks for investigations, if these are ever going to happen.
Truthfully, the answer is they will never happen. Because this Attorney General, unlike other Attorney Generals, some of whom you and I remember resigned in protest, when a president didn't act honorable, that's not this Attorney General. And so get to the truth of Benghazi and Fast and Furious, in the IRS investigation as well. We've asked for special prosecutors. He absolutely will not grant them. His priorities are not your priorities. And again, the power of the ballot box brought us this Attorney General. And I think until we have a new president, we're going to continue to have a fight on our hands. I wish it were different. Wish I could tell you something else, but do you see any different than that?
Is there any way around it?
Pretty tough. He's the top law enforcement person in the country. Justice Department has amazing titles. How they choose to use it, they have great discretion in. And what we've also seen besides what they do, is what they don't do. They put no limits on this president. Affordable Care Act, any of this overreach, they come up with the justification for it rather than saying, this is the clear law of the land. A good example, and Steve, did you mention Senator Coburn the other day? You know, Senator Coburn released a report that showed that the government had released 600 illegal immigrants with criminal records here. They did it during sequester. They used sequester as an excuse to do it. But the law of the land says that no person living here illegally with a criminal record can stay. It is just very clear. And they chose to ignore it. And so, yeah, this is, and we all have seen one after another here. And that's why, I think that's why we are all so frustrated with the direction the country's in. So, just say what, where we got my here to go, maybe. And we got a couple more down.
Hi, my name is John from my area. I have several questions. What are you, the first issue I have is, what are you going to do about trying to get this defunded with the immigrants that are here so that they're not hurting our economy, especially with the, send them up to Detroit or in Astrodome, just get them out of the area. And my other issue would be, would you ever support a bill that would take the federal out and just write us a blank check to let Texas itself do it? Because we know how to do it better. I mean, DC is a mess. It's Texas, we know how to do it. We're both the best state to live in. That's my first issue.
You know, the Constitution,
Yeah.
in my view, gives the one of the few real powers and priorities of a federal government should be to secure our borders and determine our naturalization, our citizenship. And so, as tempting as it is to, and I want to turn back a bunch to the states, no question, power as much as we can give back, national security, in my view, immigration, the federal government needs to do its job. That's in my view.
Okay, and my next question, what are you doing to defund and get rid of Obamacare? And would you support a bill that would take everyone of the, like U.S. representatives and senators in D.C., where they have to abandon their current health standing and they have to get on Obamacare themselves and deal with it?
One, to the first question, I've done everything I can and will continue to do everything I can to fund and repeal Obamacare. Our committee, Ways and Means Committee, was in this fight. That's where it started. That's where we got a 1,000-page bill at 9 o'clock at night and a 300-page amendment about midnight to vote on it the next morning. This is where, and as you know, I and my staff did the Obamacare charts so the American people could see what a bureaucratic mess this was. And the House has never funded Obamacare. We've defunded about $56 billion of it. It's the reason that they have scrambled, robbing Peter to pay Paul, to implement this terrible law. And we're not, let me just make this clear, we're not just fighting against the Affordable Care Act. We're fighting for our families and who've been hurt, our patients who are on plans that they don't want, that are more expensive, our local businesses who are cutting hours and not hiring new workers because of it. And because we've now have patients on these plans, can't see the doctors they used to see, can't go to the hospitals they used to go to, and are paying so much for medicine that now isn't covered. And so, yeah, I'm not going to give up on the fight, to stop that horrible law. On the second point, in that law is a provision that says every member of Congress has to be in the Affordable Care Act. I am. Our family had a Blue Cross Blue Shield plan that I thought was just fine. Members of Congress ought to live under the same laws as everybody else. So I'm in the Affordable Care Act, and like a lot of Americans, my premium each month is double what it was. My deductible is quadruple what it was. The most expensive medicine for my youngest son, we are now footing the bill for to the tune, it's unbelievable. Thankfully, we have savings we can dip into, but what about other families in here? So the answer is yeah, I'm on it. I hate it, and I know exactly what these other folks are going through. You know, that's why we have to appeal it. That's my view. Before we go, I know we're going to take a couple more, but we do have a scout back there wants to ask a question. So before we go, we'll get to you, okay?
My question, first of all, my name is Mr. Reyes. I'm from Conroe.
Nice to see you.
My question to you would be, with the economy in Texas here booming, there are many jobs that are being created, and that's a great thing. But the thing that I've noticed when I'm seeking a job is a lot of them require experience that I don't have.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to college right now. In fact, me and my wife just came back from school up in San Houston to come see you here.
It's a great school.
It is. And my concerns are, my federal Pell Grant being funded. I haven't heard you say anything. I heard you at the beginning of this town hall saying that there's not enough that we can give you to cut. Is education one of those things you want to cut?
Well, education that doesn't actually give you opportunities, yes. Bureaucracy, yes. Pell Grants, work-study programs, opportunities for you to earn your way through school. We're not cutting those. We're not cutting the Pell Grant. One thing that really worries me is how much student debt our young people have coming out of school these days. The government solution up there is to keep raising the limit of how much you can borrow. I think that's the wrong solution, is to let you go deeper in debt. And so I really think from federal government level, our role in higher education should be to help families save for college, create an economy where you can get a job to pay off those debts, to fund the basic research that sometimes universities can help us in medical breakthroughs in other areas. I think that's the role at most of the federal government. So I voted against the federal government interjecting itself into our state colleges or local community colleges. I don't want them involved with it. But I also don't want to just open the door up for more and more debt for more and more students who can't hope to pay it off. Do you have a solution I ought to be thinking about? Is there an idea you've got?
Well, I don't really have a solution. I'm still going to school to learn some solution.
Yeah. Well, my wife graduated from Sam Houston. It's a great university. Let's do another, then let's get to the scout. Yes, sir.
Brayden, and I've just been overhearing my parents and grandpa, and I was wondering if they were going to make a law against the illegal immigrants using welfare as an advantage.
Well, we certainly hope so, because I think, Brady, that's one of the magnets for people coming to America. And again, I want people to come to America, pursue their dream. I want them to come in the front door. I want them to come so they contribute to the country and not live off of it. And so right now, we've stopped illegal immigrants from applying for or being eligible for Social Security, for Medicare, for parts of Medicaid. They're eligible for school education and free lunches, breakfast there. Unfortunately, there is so much fraud in our system. The Ways and Means Committee I serve on have identified a number of areas where checks are going to those living here illegally, especially in the child tax credit, which sounds like, oh, it's a credit off the taxes I pay. Actually, part of it's refundable. We actually write a check and send to you. And we've been trying now for 3 years to close a loophole that we identified that allows people not to provide the Social Security number of their child when they're seeking that check. And so there's an estimated $7 billion or more of your tax dollars that go to people who are either living here illegally, aren't eligible, or trying to get this for children who don't exist. And so we're trying to close the fraud that's in this huge government that allows some people to game that system and get those benefits. And another example, our fight with the IRS is not just over the targeting. We've got people, both legally and illegally, claiming tax refunds so fraudulently. In one case, the IRS sent over $40 million of refunds to one home address that had filed 20,000 applications. And they didn't catch it until they got over 20,000 tax returns from one house. They get one from most of us. 20,000, there's just so much fraud and so much abuse in the system. You know, we spend, I can't tell you how much of our day trying to stop it, because someday you'll be paying the taxes, but right now your family's hard-earned tax dollars are going to fund both benefits that people don't deserve and fraud that we all want to close. So, thanks for the question. And thanks for being in the Scout. Yes, sir.
My name is David McMillan.
Yes, sir.
I have 3 items. Number 1, during the 2012 campaign, the Republican slogan concerning health care was repeal and replace. The repeal part, I get, that's easy.
Yeah.
What happened to the replace? The Republicans don't seem to have a plan. That's just not my opinion. Newt Gingrich said the same thing not long ago, so I'm looking for where is that. Second item has to do with the national debt and the deficit. Senator Tom Coburn, one of the most conservative senators in Congress, put forward a plan called Back to the Black. As far as I know, it's received almost no consideration, and I think the reason is because it calls for really painful and politically unpopular cuts. So my question is, when are we going to hear the truth about what's going to take to have any really effective action?
Yeah.
Number 3, I was 12 years old when World War II ended. I can remember that we raised taxes sky high. We had war bond drives, scout number drives, etc. I think it is extremely immoral to send our troops overseas to fight and die, and the rest of us not be willing to pay for it. If it's important enough for them to die, it's important enough to pay for it. Thank you.
The first one answer on replace is that our challenge among Republicans is that we have too many ideas on what to replace the Affordable Care Act with. Our House conservatives, the Republican Study Committee that I serve on, I have for many years, we have a plan. The Ways and Means Committee I serve on, we have a replacement plan that we offered and were not allowed to vote on during when all that was rushed through. We have, unfortunately, so many plans we haven't settled on one. The sooner we do that and talk to the American public about it, I think the better it'll be, so they can see there is another way to get affordable health care, and the Affordable Care Act is not it. On the second issue, if you ask where is truth in budgeting, there's 2 documents you can look for. Because the House has passed the Ryan budget that balances in 10 years. And each year, the House conservatives, me and 130 others, offer a balanced budget, a real budget that balances in 4 years. It is very hard. It has got some cuts that make you say, ow, in a big way. But our point is we need to tell the truth about what it'll take to get back to a balanced budget. And what I like about both of those budgets, and come to my website, they're on there, is that in both of those budgets, the goal is not simply balance the budget. It's to start paying off the national debt. In the House Republican budget, it goes all the way to a debt-free America. I mean, no one talks about that anymore, but we ought to be talking about that. So we do have 2, I think, truth budgets that we've proposed, one of them that we've passed. And it makes incredibly tough decisions on how to do it. And the other thought I have, I think those spending cuts, like I said, will get us halfway there. We're going to need a stronger economy to really get to a balanced budget to pay off the debt. That's where I think fixing this tax code will be. Thank you.
Congressman, last question?
Yeah. Yes, where's our microphones? Let's take this, and then I got one comment I want to make as we end, and then I'll stay around to take questions. But thanks again for being patient, everybody.
Yes, sir. Bob Holden from Willis.
Yeah, hey, Bob.
Comment, even if we take this Senate, we won't have 2/3 to overturn Obama's veto.
Yeah.
But with these investigations, my second tour in Vietnam, I was told, if you obey an unlawful order, you're going to jail. Low-level employees have no justification for breaking the law. They've committed a crime. I believe by targeting them, the pigs at the top of the squid. Also, one thing I think could solve a lot of our problems very rapidly is abolishing the incorporation doctrine. The Supreme Court has adopted it incrementally over time, and Congress has acquiesced to it. And Congress has the ability and the right and the law to eliminate the Supreme Court except for Justice Roberts. The Supreme Court needs to give back that power to the states. The incorporation doctrine was not part of our founding, and it eliminates everything that are the majority of the problems bothering us. It funds the government, eliminates the debt, gives us back our freedoms. And the existing laws that were put out by the agencies could be viewed as suggestions to the states rather than punishable laws.
Do you have some material on that? The incorporation, I can sort of the history of that. Do you mind getting it to me? Yeah, I'd like to. As we finish, I'm going to stay around a couple thoughts. One, I want to stay in contact with you. I want to hear from you. We've got e-newsletter, Facebook, Twitter, phone calls, emails. If you want to sign up, if you want to stay engaged and informed, tell us how we can best communicate with you. Finally, we talk a lot about challenges in America. We've got a lot of challenges around the world as well. With ISIS, with Libya, with Ukraine and Russia, and our friend Israel, all of that. And it's pretty easy these days to get discouraged about what's going on. We're just headed the wrong direction, I think, in a big way. But there's also, I think it's also important to remember what's good about America. And there's plenty of that around us. Have any of you been following this Little League World Series that just ended? Yeah. There's 3 great stories there. One of them comes from Houston, that team from Pearland, but they came 1 game away from the U.S. Championship 5 years ago. They came back disappointed. They regrouped. They fought back into the World Series. And what I noticed was that they were, as you read about them, it's so expensive to send a player and their family to the World Series, about $7,000 a family. So this Pearland team gets together, the community, to raise funds. And I noticed the top fundraiser for Pearland was this woman restaurant owner who had also did it 5 years ago. Turns out she has no children in the Little League program. She just does it because it's important for the community to back their players and families. Second story, Monet Davis, the African-American young woman, 13 years old, first woman or man to throw a opening shutout in the Little League World Series. Sort of amazing athlete. She didn't want to play baseball. She likes basketball. She wants to be in the WNBA. She didn't want to be a pitcher. She started as an outfielder. But the team got in trouble one day, and they put her in to pitch. And the first person she faced hit a home run off. She said, it made me mad. So I went back and I started practicing. And she said, now the boys think I throw soft, but when they see my fastball, they get frightened and I strike them out. Now, what she also said was that I wish more girls would play these team sports so I wouldn't be special anymore. That's a great story. And then maybe the best comes out of Chicago, of all places. But you have the first all African-American team in some time to make the Little League World Series, much less win the U.S. part of this. Usually when you look at World Series, you look at the players. In this case, we probably ought to look at the parents, because Chicago, as you know, some years are the murder capital of America. no more so than on the south side of Chicago. In fact, one weekend in April, I noticed they had so many shootings in the south side of Chicago. They wounded 36 people, including 6 children, and killed 9 people. One weekend, Friday through Sunday, in the south side of Chicago. Well, out of that same area comes a neighborhood that said, not for our kids. Out of Washington Heights, this Jackie Robinson West team, their parents some time ago said things are going to be different for our kids. They decided baseball was a family sport. They said it's about dads throwing the ball with their sons or daughters. It's about moms getting the kids to practice. It's about the family at the concession stand and taking care of the Little League field and being there to cheer on their kids. They made a commitment as parents that things would be different for their children. And they would be the ones to give their kids a better opportunity. And so here's this, again, all African American team fighting and winning the U.S. Championship, coming out of neighborhoods that may be some of the roughest in all the country. The reason I like to remind people about, boys from Pearland and a young woman from Pennsylvania and the Chicago team is what's great about America is not in Washington, D.C. It's not in the federal budget. It's not in another program. It's not in a press conference. It's not in a filibuster. What's great about America is right here in our community. It's our families like you working hard to raise your kids. It's local businesses trying to give opportunities and jobs to people, a chance to build their own lives. It's about the community pulling together and doing what's right for their children and their community. So my point is we need to stop looking to Washington for all the solutions. Everything we need to make the country great is right here in our community, frankly, right here in this room. So God bless you. Thank you very much for having me here tonight.
Various names. And this